you doing? You know where we're going.
Into war, George.
I'll be useful, sir.
One of ours.
He's on me.
I'm on him.
The ship's about to leave.
Down you go.
They need to send more ships. Every hour the enemy pushes closer. They've activated the civilian boats. Civilians? We need destroyers. Where are we going?
Dunkirk.
I'm not going back. If we go there, we'll die.
You're weekend sailors, not the bloody Navy.
You should be at home!
There's no hiding from this, son. We have a job to do.
Turn it around!
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender. We shall never surrender.
Dunkirk is a film based on Operation Dynamo, a colossal military disaster and evacuation effort for Allied soldiers during the onslaught of World War II in the 1940s. It focuses on the harsh events and conditions the soldiers had to endure while they were waiting and hoping on trying to get back home, with a deeply unsettling uncertainty and suspense as to whether they will survive the wait while being surrounded by the enemy. The film is directed by Christopher Nolan, creator of Inception, Memento, The Prestige, the recent Batman adaptations, and Interstellar. Nolan has demonstrated yet again that he is among the best filmmaker we have in the business. We can see his true love and conscientiousness for film in the way he makes films and stories. In Dunkirk, there are 3 different stories interwoven and taking part at different points of time and locations: air, land, and sea. The concept of time, again, is a key focus here. It is referenced and even woven into the soundtrack of the film, once again scored by Hans Zimmerman. Notice how you can hear a ticking clock in the film, giving the events of Dunkirk a sense of urgency and temporality. The film follows a non-linear plot progression, but not as mind-bending and complex as the other Nolan films like Memento. The focus and use of time in the film to tell a non-linear plot was used to tell a story that would jump back and forth. As the audience, you see 1 week with the soldiers, 1 day in the evac effort, and 1 hour in the cockpit, all of which subjectively felt like it was much longer due to the intensity of what happened in that relatively small chunk of time. This film, as Nolan intended, conveyed a truly subjective experience from the point of view of the characters. It gives you the feeling that you are going through what they are going through, and the film ingeniously and meticulously conveys how time would have felt and been experienced from the point of view of the soldiers during the horrific events.
Those storylines, as you say, there are 3 storylines, broadly speaking: land, sea, and air. Yeah. 1 is a week, 1 is a day, 1 is an hour. Yeah. And we sort of braid them together in a particular way. And really the purpose of that structure was always, to me, structure always comes about as a result of trying to answer the issue of point of view. So Memento was a film told backwards because I wanted to give the audience the experience of someone who couldn't remember what had just happened. So we invert the chronology and put the audience in that place. This structure, similarly, came about as a result of saying, okay, I want to stay in the human scale for the entire film. I want to know just what they would have known. I want to see what they just would have seen, the people who were involved in the events. I don't want to cut out to politicians or to generals in rooms with big maps and symbols of forces they're pushing around. The story of Dunkirk is a very, very big story, and so I needed to find a way to build up a set of subjective experiences that, as they cross-cut, they would give the audience a better understanding of the whole. So they would be gaining some understanding of the bigger issues. So by viewing it from land, from sea, from air, the same events from different points of view, it started to build up a bigger picture of the movements of the evacuation, which are, of course, what is so amazing about the story. But hopefully never stepping outside this intensely subjective viewing that I wanted. I wanted the whole film, and that's the reason it's a much shorter film than my usual films. My films have been.
When I experienced the dogfighting scene, I got the feeling that it took dauntingly forever. But then I remembered, as the film pointed out, that that was just 1 hour. This focus on time in the soundtrack gave a little bit of an Interstellar feel, Interstellar being a film which was heavily focused on the concept of time dilation and gravity, but I think the focus on time may become a signature Nolan style or thing. Each of the stories show the audience the difficulties, perils, horror, the beautiful courage and selflessness involved in the evacuation effort. The story plot doesn't have much dialogue, but this doesn't lose any of its emotional charge, and the film is exhilarating throughout. The choice to keep dialogue to a minimum evidences a creative awareness and intuition in Nolan to not detract from the main focus of the film. Little to no dialogue added to the suspense by focusing on the moment instead. Recreating some of the events for the film, Nolan did masterfully. The dogfighting was heart-racing and thrilling to watch, as were many of the other scenes. During the dogfighting, I felt like I could actually follow the line of sight of the pilots and genuinely be aware of where each were in the space of the shot. The sound also enhanced the action on screen, giving the viewing experience an authentic portal or window into World War II and the sound of its vehicles and weapons. Christopher Nolan is passionate about film, even to the extent that he advocates curating and preserving film in their original states as long as possible, stressing the importance of it, thinking of it as a matter of cultural preservation and cultivation. One recurring philosophy of Nolan's films is his persistence in adhering to a level of realism. His Batman adaptation drifted away from the Tim Burton, macabre, gothic, and fairy tale-esque Gotham, and instead grounded it in a more modern and realistic world. His commitment to a level of realism also means little to no CGI, pulling off scenes in such a way that it would have one think that Nolan is an illusionist of some sort. This adherence to realism is maintained again in Dunkirk. Everything in Dunkirk, down to the planes and warships, were real and from the 1940s. They were used to recreate the journeys they took in World War II. The planes and even the movement of the cockpit were all done and captured in real footage with this impractically huge IMAX camera. One of the biggest challenges for Nolan was fitting that IMAX camera in such tight spaces. Amazing that he pulled this off. No surprise then that they filmed Dunkirk in Dunkirk. I mean, just to evidence this adherence to the realism, the crew got a Russian-Soviet plane which is about the same shape and size of a Spitfire, but had 2 cockpits. They converted it and made it look like Spitfires to be used in the film. And why did they do this? This was merely so the actors could actually be filmed in the cockpit as it was flying, adding that level of immersiveness to their performance. The level of detail also demanded respect. Everything down to the sounds of the fighter jets was spot on. You hear the screeching, thunderous German fighter planes roar as they whiz by, contrasted with the quieter marvel of engineering Rolls-Royce Spitfire engines. The film slavishly adheres to the important details, and overwhelmingly does such a good job at immersing you into the events the soldiers are going through. Which leads to my next point about the best or most touching aspect of the film for me: emotion and empathy. The film does such a great job at making you empathize with the soldiers. Take this short clip for example, where the soldiers are horrified to find an enemy fighter jet lining up to bomb them again. We can almost instantly understand what the characters are thinking and feeling, and every time I watch this scene I just get tingles. The film is packed with scenes where you are empathizing without the film resorting to long, grandiose, bloated dramatic dialogues and backstory. The film grabs you by the collar and throws you into the deep end with the soldiers. Dunkirk captures the horror, suspense, desperation and adversity of what happened, but at the same time it is an uplifting story, showing the courage and selflessness of people in their darkest hour. The cinematography was conscientiously done and almost flawless, shot in full IMAX, and if you can watch this on 70mm projection to enjoy the higher resolution and wider color gamut, then you are doing yourself a great favour and will be adding to your immersive experience. Cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema certainly delivered by capturing crystal clear footage. I loved how they captured and presented the atmosphere in this film. The film was beautifully shot and presented. The runtime of the film is short, and I creatively agree with Nolan on this, but the film zones in on something that could be quite fatiguing if it were beyond its current runtime. Dunkirk focuses in on the perils the soldiers faced during the evacuation effort, and less about the story and the characters' depth. The short runtime was suitable to the suspense and intensity that Nolan wanted to maintain. My only issue is that the dialogue was at times inaudible or hard to understand. This resulted in some scenes not resonating with me because I partially could hear them. In the past, Nolan was persuaded to make a particular character's voice easier to understand, i.e. Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, but it appears that this time he decided to stick with an authentic acoustic, but at the expense of really key bits of dialogue being missed. Verdict. Dunkirk is a film that is like a viewable slice of time or portal into a particular event in history that invites us to watch 400,000 soldiers, all stranded on the mole or shoreline, hoping for a miracle. Verdict, 4.8 out of 5.